All right, I got 6 o'clock on the dot, so we're going to go ahead and start the meeting. We'll call it to order. We'll stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I need a motion to declare open meeting. So moved. Second, declare open meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Notification of the Open Meetings Act is posted on the door in the back of the room. Roll call, myself, yes. Justin?
Present.
Melissa? Chance? Yes. Caden?
Yes.
Wyatt?
Here.
All right, number 6, approve the agenda. Changes there. You got a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
They moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, we'll move on to our discussion items in number 7. What we're going to start out with is reviewing the latest floor plan that's going to come about from the last meeting with the committee, which has been over a month ago. Kind of made those changes. We'll have Bob Suka from Carlson West kind of lead us through that. We're also going to have principals, Mrs. Hodson, Mr. Schmidt, kind of give some background as to why we've decided to do some of these things on these projects. So we'll turn it over to Bob.
All right, so for those of you on the committee, I'm going to give you a little recap here, right? We started this process months ago, last summer, and a lot of you took the time and effort to first tour some other school districts, see what's out there, what other school districts have done in the past with their educational facilities. We came back here and we toured the facilities of Plainview, both elementary, high school, everything that we've talked about as far as that goes. And then we broke you into small groups just like you are here. Sometimes we're at the elementary, sometimes we were here. But as a committee, we kind of put it to you to say, you've looked at other schools, you've looked at your school. We had the facility audit that was presented even a year ago before that. And we asked you to say, brainstorm, give us a list of ideas. What are the things that if you were in charge and you wanted to say we should look at X, Y, Z, we brainstormed that list. We took that architecturally and started to create some solutions based on those needs. And the initial solutions had nothing to do with cost. It was just you're identifying an issue, we're showing you a possible way to address that issue, and we started working through options. In those earliest plans, we had a number of different things that as time went on, and then we started interjecting cost, looking at floor plan options, we started paring some things back, right? So at one point we had daycare was part of the discussion. At one point we had additional renovation areas that were part of the discussion. Way back when, if you remember, we had multiple construction zones on multiple sides of the building. And the discussion was, well, is that efficient? Is that the best way to do it? We tightened up some of the floor plans. In the end, we've spent probably the last 2 months, and I know there was a month in here in between, where we've really been dealing in a little more minutia of what the plan looks like. But the goal of this process is to get you as a committee to get down to a point where you can say, we've gone through this process, we've looked at needs, we've looked at costs associated with those needs, and we're trying to land on what I would call a program, right? What are those elements that you as a committee would look at these conceptual floor plans and say, if I'm talking about kindergarten and preschool rooms, right, we need to address that. If I'm talking about the 1920 building and the condition that's in, and is that the right way to have classrooms, or should we replace them? Those are the things we're going to be discussing tonight. Those are the things that we're going to walk you through as we try to get to a final resolution of a committee, the work that you guys have been doing with the survey, to have a final resolution for you to make your voices heard as a committee so that the school board can consider, is this the right kit of parts? What I will tell you is, in any process like this, we never get to a final floor plan by the end of this process. What we need is the program. Because I've shown you multiple plans where fitness could go on the first floor, fitness could go on the second floor, right? We could have band and music move to the middle. We could have band and music stay where they are. The key elements, though, are, do we need to address band and music, right? after you get to a successful bond vote in any school district, my process then continues, just like I've been working with you as a committee, with the school board, with the administration, with the staff, to make sure that the program elements that are part of a bond resolution are then realized in construction. But that doesn't always mean that where I show a restroom on one side of the gym, it might flip to the other, right? What we're trying to say is there's a program and there's a value associated with that program. That's what we want you as a committee to find a resolution tonight. And the best way we feel that that's gonna happen is through this survey, so that you guys can have your individual voices as a committee heard, right? And it's all blind, so we want your honest, open opinion about this process and how this is going, okay? Any questions on the process we've had to date and the floor plan that we're looking at? If not, I'll turn it over to you.
I think the big thing that Jen and I want to share with you guys that Bob hit on was making sure that we look at the components of what everything entails. Doesn't matter where they're at, all that stuff right now. Jen and I went through and looked at needs of our district, and that's what we're really happy with how this committee's worked and with the board, and keeping the needs that we have in the forefront. And that's why you haven't seen a lot of things change with the floor plan. Bob said they moved, all those good things, but the needs that we have as a district are pretty apparent, and you guys have seen that throughout the months that we've worked on this. So with that, Jen, you can start in on some of the things you were going to hit.
Okay, so first of all, some of you may not know who I am. Jen Hudson, I'm the elementary principal here. I've actually been invested in this district for the last 20 years. I've watched a lot of these needs happen over time, and so I just want to reiterate why the spaces are needed while we're up here. So I'm going to start with section 3. Section 3 you're going to notice is where the street is. All students at Plainview Public Schools travel across the street at some point. So the high school, junior high kids, they all come to our building for lunch every day. Elementary kids specifically probably travel twice as much because we have those teachers who we share space with. And one of the goals that we talked about multiple times is finding a central location for those classrooms that we share. So for example, right now, our guidance teachers, they don't have their own space. They share spaces with other people, so we want to be able to have a central location for them. We talk about music. Almost all the elementary kids travel over to high school they all travel over here for band. Some have music in the elementary, some utilize the band room over here. So music's another shared space. You'll notice that that's centralized for that reason. PE. All of the elementary kids come across the street for PE every day. That's twice a week. So I'm sitting here talking about how many times kids travel. At least 2 times a day they're traveling. Media center. You'll notice the media center is centralized. Mrs. Yolk has this space and in the elementary to manage, and we felt like it's worth having one central location for multiple reasons, for kids and those having to move back and forth. So all of those shared spaces, art, of course, art, right here. All of the elementary kids cross the street every week for art. We wanted that to be centrally located and easier access for all of these kids. When you talk about kids moving from place to place, yes, it's manageable. We've done it for years, but there's a lot of different elements that go into play with that, and safety is always one of our major concerns. So for the committee to recognize that and put it in the middle, we are very thankful for that specific space. The next thing that I wanted to talk about over here.
Would you mention a secure vestibule in section 3?
Yes.
What a secure vestibule is?
On the top. So right now, the only safety feature that we have when people enter our buildings is pushing a button, and then they have free access to our building. So this just allows us to have another level of safety when it comes to entering our building as a whole. Okay, the other thing I want to point out is over here, number 4. Number 4 right now is our lunchroom. The 2 grades, preschool and kindergarten, are 2 grades that demand the most space, classroom space for us. So what we're looking at here is taking that and repurposing it for our preschool program. Years ago, when I first became principal, we were very ambitious and wanted to bring in a 3-year-old preschool, a need from our community. But we couldn't because of space. So now this allows us that opportunity to have 3-year-old preschool, have our 4-year-old preschool, make room for kindergarten. So we're going to renovate. This is currently our library and computer lab. Renovate that for kindergarten. And then our upper elementary classrooms, which are full, we can repurpose the space and put them in where our preschool and kindergarten are right now. So we're able to alleviate the burden that we have with our upper elementary classrooms being too small and repurposing and moving them elsewhere in the building. Okay, so another one, we're talking about space. And before I had mentioned guidance counselor space. One of the things that probably has changed the most in education is the additional services that we find ourselves needing to provide for students. So for example, we have a physical therapist that comes in to provide services for our students, an occupational therapist. We have outside counseling services coming in to provide extra services for our students. We have a hearing specialist that we have, a licensed mental health specialist, and our teammates. So those are all additional services that are being provided to our students on a daily basis. We have nowhere for them to go. Currently, and speech pathologists that come in 4 days out of the 5 a week. Our speech person has their own space, but all those people that I just listed to you do not. Some of them work in our nurses station. Some of them work in an office by my office. Some of them work in the lunchroom. Some of them work in our workroom. It just depends on the day where they have space to work. So that's another need we've talked about. And you'll notice that we have over here with our guidance services, extra support for those people. Okay, so let's talk about 6. You're going to notice area 6 over here is our SPED services, and 5 for the high school. I just want to point out some SPED statistics to you. Our pre-K-12 SPED population includes 68 students. There are 68 students who receive SPED services in our district. And of those 68, 17 are shared with our speech program, or our speech pathologist. And when we talk about the need for SPED space, I think it's often forgotten about all the different services we provide. You just heard me talk about all the different outside services that we provide. Those are extensions of our SPED program. And I will tell you, Mrs. G is our elementary SPED teacher, and there are a lot of times when her room is preoccupied with the things that happen with the students she works with, that they end up utilizing other spaces. So for example, do we have any space for de-escalation in the elementary? No. When we have students who are in a crisis need, they utilize a 4x6 concrete wall space or my space if they don't have anywhere else to go. And so when we talk about needing extra space or providing extra space for our special ed program, there's a need for it, and a lot of it is just things you guys don't see, so you might wonder why. And so the statistics within the walls of this building would prove that the special education space is needed.
Can I add a little bit more to that, Mrs. Hodson, if you
Yep.
don't mind? A lot of our school too is not ADA compliant, and we kind of look at what are the future, what are our students that we're going to be getting into elementary school, and we are going to have kiddos with walkers, we are going to have kiddos with wheelchairs, and right now a lot of our spaces cannot accommodate that for them to get through the door. I have students who are not toileted and need assistance with changing. Right now the only space we have is the restroom right off the principal's office. Again, it's not ADA compliant, and we don't have a changing table for them. We are in a 3x3 foot bathroom, if that. A student's laying on the floor, we're helping them change. We're just trying to give them a little bit more humility and make their day more successful, and make it a little bit easier on our staff members as well.
With regards to the high school SPED, we have that moved down to where Mrs. Jacobson's room currently is now. Thought process behind that is being able to offer more transitional skills to our students. So what that means is once a student becomes 14 years of age, they enter into a transition portion of their IEP. So we have to teach students how they're going to act, or how they're going to participate once they leave these walls in the real world. Okay, so we try and help them with cooking skills or communication skills or how to apply for a job, finances, all of those things. So by moving to this space, it would allow our high school kids the opportunity to be able to learn those skills while in there. They learn how to do their laundry. They would learn how to be able to cook. All of those things which currently we don't have the space to do. All right, through our special education program. Our special education program is ran in a room that is just a normal classroom right now. It doesn't have the amenities to be able to offer all those other things. And with that, if you were to go in there, she talked about our caseload being 68 students, with 20 of those students being in this building. Most of those have all of their things in that room. So if you go in, there's desks all along the walls in the middle of the room, and those students have their own space. So space is a huge issue, not having the room for them, but us not being able to supply those needs either for them to prepare them, because we educate SPED students anywhere from birth all the way to 21 years of age. All of those kids are our responsibility until they hit that age limit, and then they transition out of our program. So we're not able to meet all of those needs currently at this time.
And one other component of SPED that people may not think is directly related is our speech services. When I was talking about numbers with SPED, I also wanted to point out speech. Speech has been one of the new components of education that maybe wasn't as predominant 20 years ago, and now there is a very high need for it. So we serve 39 students in Plainview Public Schools with speech needs. And as I said earlier, 17 of those are shared between our speech department. One thing that I want to point out is of those 39, 21 of them are birth to 4-year-old. So the speech need is noticed before they even walk in our doors. And that's a responsibility of Plainview Public Schools to provide that service. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is we all think of speech as articulation. Yes, those are the needs at a very young age, but as kids get older, it becomes an articulation and expressive language need that they need support for. And so even though you might think, oh, speech, articulation, that's minor, there are several other needs with students at an older age. And so we talk about what do we as educators do to help meet those needs beyond the speech services that they receive. I will tell you that I've talked to, the school board has heard me say multiple times and talked about the science of reading. So science of reading is a term out there that basically pertains to effective research-based strategies to teach reading. And our staff, almost all of the elementary, the regular ed classroom teachers in the elementary are letters trained. So what that means is they know the essential components of reading and spelling. And we've invested money into that training for several years now. Most recently, our entire staff, including the paras that help us from day to day, are now Haggerty trained. So phonics has always been very important to us, but it's now more than just the classroom teachers that know those things. So a lot of the time and effort that the school board has supported us in the elementary the last several years proves to be that reading and phonics are very important to us, and that we make that investment for everybody to help meet the needs that students have with reading. Yes, so speaking of reading, one of the most predominant things that you will notice if you were to walk in classrooms that are teaching reading is space for small groups. Right now, teachers, if they want space for small groups, you're going to find them in the hallways. You're going to find them in our workroom. You're going to find them in the lunchroom. I mean, every teacher in the elementary will tell you they want small group time. It's one of the most effective teaching strategies. But we don't have space for that. And so being able to provide extra space, which we can do when we relocate some of these classrooms for those teachers to be able to provide that strategy for students. And so lots of different small group spaces can be utilized through that. Okay, anything else for you, Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, I'm doing that real quick. Jen hit on kind of the commons area there too, and talking about having a collaborative area. Right now, our students don't have anywhere to greet and meet, really. In front of their lockers is the only place. So when students come into the building, they're in the hallways and lining everywhere. And if you come to an activity, which if you were here over the weekend, you would have saw, our building was packed wall to wall, up and down lockers. We had people from out of town going into our educational spaces and moving just because we didn't have room for people. We didn't have space for locker rooms. We didn't have space for people to change. We didn't have space for officials. They were across the hall in a classroom. So with that, I mean, when you look at it, having that space for people to be able to gather and in between events when they're watching or whatever it might be, just having that additional space is a huge piece when hosting activities. You have more?
I do have one thing that I want to
Keep
do.
going.
Do you want
You want me to go through all mine?
Yes,
and
I
then
do.
you'll
I
that?
will, yep.
Sounds great.
Okay.
So with that, one of the big things has been CTE. Obviously, that has been really little discussion on that, on a need for it. And I'm glad to see that because I had Mr. Peter go through all of our stuff. Out of the last 4 years, 55% of our graduates have either gone to a trade school or straight into the workforce. So that is a large portion of our student body that we have to prepare once they leave these walls. And right now, I think we can do a more efficient job of doing that and offer more skills to our students if we're able to add this piece on. Right now, our shop is a bus barn from the 40s. There's no storage for any materials out there. There's not a room for finishing. Our CAD is computers that are in a back room that doesn't have a lot of room for students to be able to work. It's not a modern space for kids to actually be creative, which is what comes down to CTE. So when you look at this, it has FCS, Ag, Business and Technology, and also Woods all put together in one space. And the big thing with that and having all of those components in one area is that they're able to collaborate. So when you go to NDE and you look at the different CTE areas and the web that they have put together, a lot of the courses overlap and work together and collaborate with one another, so they're able to do different projects together. So Mrs. Jacobson, when she's doing her housing and design class, she is able to go into the CAD space and be able to use those computers and be able to put together an outline or a blueprint of what a house should look like. I've seen her students doing that and sharing that space, but by doing this, we would be able to have teachers working together and collaborating on it instead of one just doing it at a time. I'm sure she would love to have Mr. Catlin help on that, just in the fact that that's what his expertise is in. Just as I know Mr. Kmet would like to ask her for help with culinary. How do you present these different types of foods? What are the different things we can make? We have a food processing class. We do not have an industrial kitchen. She does have 4 different cooking stations in her room right now. But if we were able to put all of these things together and offer our students, what we would be able to do would be far greater than what we're accomplishing right now. Are we being efficient? Yes. Are we doing what we can? Yes. But are we coming up with what we could do for our students and what we could make possible for them? Not at this time. So this space has been very influential. But with that, that means the 20 building has to come down. You go upstairs right now, there's 3 classrooms up there that get used for speech, and a couple of them are just strictly storage. Storage is going to be huge for us if we do this. So that's why the current fitness room we've changed into the back of the stage and storage, so we're able to put all of our things at a place that's centrally located for the high school, easy access for high school teachers to use and have access to. The wrestling room would also be in there. Right now we have 2 wrestling rooms, one upstairs, one downstairs, custom built by Coach Boyer. When you look at it, Title IX, equal space, providing equal spaces for both genders to be able to wrestle because we offer girls wrestling and boys wrestling. Right now, we have 16 boys out, 12 girls. If you throw together junior high, that's another 23. So we have a large group of wrestlers. That's 61 kids that we have out for wrestling right now, just in junior high and high school. If you look at our youth, which is pre-K all the way through junior high, we have 107 out. So in the 2 small rooms that we have right now, which is a mat and a half and then a mat and a quarter, I believe, downstairs, our coaches are being very efficient, but we could be better. And so with that, adding 2 equal wrestling rooms for each boys and girls to be separate, 1, it gives us the space. 2, it makes us compliant with Title IX and making sure that we're equal opportunity for both genders. And it cleans up a lot of those things, a lot of those issues that we would have.
I would mention that second level.
Yes, that would be second level, right where 3 is. It's the dotted lines. So that would be up on the second level across from the replacement classrooms that would fill in for the 20 building, which is where we offer right now our course, math, English, and then Spanish is up there as well. And those are 2 classes for each except for Spanish. I also wrote for the paper some stuff about our gymnasium space. It's a classroom. If you come in here during the day, our pirate gym is filled with elementary kids or junior high kids pretty much all day long, because that's where they go to PE every single day. Along that same time, we have our high school in the fitness room. They also utilize the tartan gym at that space. So at any given time throughout the week, we offer 48.5 hours worth of PE, K-12 across the board. Average educational week is 33.5 hours once you take teacher plan periods out, or if you take early arrival and leave time off as well. And so you have a lot of time that is overlapped. And so in those spaces, really we just have a ton of overlap if you come in the building.
The gym is something that elementary, anything besides PE, elementary, we don't have precedence to use it very often. And there are many times where weather conditions prevent us from outside recess, that we want to utilize the gym for recess or space for something, and we don't get that luxury because we don't have the space for it. So beyond the school day, it's our most attended space as well. I mean, it's just always in use. Everybody wants access to it.
And to go with that, the reason it's so full is because we have our traditional sports that we offer. We have basketball, we have volleyball, all of those things. We have strong numbers. In our youth sports right now, we had 115 kids playing youth volleyball and youth basketball over that course of time. And so 115 kids to try and divide into 2 spaces after 6 o'clock at night when high school gets done. We have people that are tough to get into that space, and we have to tell people no, and kids are practicing until 8, 9 o'clock at night on weeknights when they have school the next day. Abby, what do you got? I see you with your hand up.
As a science teacher, sometimes we do physics lessons where I need more space, so we'd like to use the gym. And I can't always get into the gym because they're using it for other things. And in the winter times and stuff, we can't necessarily just go outside. For instance, last week, we were taking the planets and we were spacing out in between the schools on the street there. And then it snowed the next day, and I'm gonna have to push it off until I get a nice day again to go out and get that space. And I can't necessarily go in the gym because we have classes going on.
So outside of the academic needs, which are there, I mean, we have a ton of youth needs throughout all of our sports, and having overlap and sharing in junior high sports that are going in the mornings. There's just a lot of things that we can do to make our building more efficient and be better for our kids. Last thing I wanted to hit with the gym, just in the fall and the winter, 221 participants is what we've had between 3rd grade through 12th grade that utilize that gym space. We have 41 competition dates. That's 110 competitions minus all youth activities that take place in the Pirate Gym. That's a lot of wear and tear when it's getting used every single day for PE. It's getting used for science activities. It's getting used for recess. It's getting used for a blood drive. And then you throw all those activities in there. If it waits another 25 years, that gym's gonna have a lot of wear and tear on it. Might not make it that long. Probably will. but, it's a big piece of it. The locker room piece of it as well, we don't have enough space to house teams that come here. If we have a traditional volleyball game against another team, yes, we have space, but we're still putting them downstairs in the locker rooms, underneath the stage. Saturday, we were putting kids back in the wrestling room to change. So space is a huge issue, and being able to give people their own locker room to change. The other piece that comes with this is in this building, for FEMA storage or FEMA shelter for our kids to be in a safe place if we have a natural disaster. Right now, we go under the stage, and that's the only place that we have that is FEMA rated. So we have 150 kids in this building, plus any staff members that we have to try and put in 2 locker rooms underneath the stage that really can't house 100 kids.
It's not FEMA rated, it's the best place you could go.
Well,
It's
yeah,
a storm
that-
shelter, but it's not FEMA rated.
The safest.
It's the safest place you can go.
So when we do a tornado drill, I mean, we have kids on the stairs, we can't get everybody down there. We have normally kids, if something were to happen, we would have bathrooms filled as well. But we don't have a true FEMA rated storage shelter for our students and staff to go to if there were a natural disaster. So, that's a big piece of the locker room, being able to offer that and to be somewhat of a central location for our staff and students. All right, did I miss anything?
I just want to paint a picture for you. So this would have been our scenario Thursday, last week Thursday. Our physical therapist was working with a 3-year-old in our computer lab. Mrs. Yolk's Howe group was meeting in one corner of the lunchroom because the library was being used by Mrs. Ham for CPR. Her space, yes, her classroom space was being used by the high school students who needed CPR training. So her elementary guidance class came to the elementary library. Our licensed mental health specialist was there meeting with a student in another corner of the lunchroom. Our school psych, which is another outside service I failed to mention earlier, she was there that day, and she was in our nurses station. And again, that nurses spot is a very small cubicle, which is a temporary location for a lot of our outside services, but anytime we have a student who needs that space, then we relocate the outside service people. My office was being used for an outside counseling service for a family that needed that. We had small reading groups all over the place, I mentioned that before. Teammates is another program that we take great pride in, and we have over 40 students in that program that they're all over the place. And I have some of those students who prefer a private space to meet with their mentor. And one of the only spots we really have is my office. So my office was used again for that purpose. And I'm always mobile and gone, so it's not a big deal. I always give up my space. But then when I was trying to talk to another student, I was in the third corner in the lunchroom. And this was all within 2 or 3 hours on Thursday. So there are multiple days where that's kind of how it works. And thankfully, our staff is very good about being flexible and moving where needed. So as you hear us talk about these spaces, the need is real, and this space is so important to everybody and their learning environment. I just want to extend my gratitude, and Mr. Schmidt and I both would say thank you to these committee members. They have put in countless hours to try and come to this point. So a lot of gratitude to you. And we're also elated to see so many other people here for this meeting. We appreciate your input. We want your voice to be heard. And these are the times where you can do that. So thank you again for taking time to be with us. Mr. Schmidt and I have dedicated years to this school, and we are very adamant about being here through the long haul. We are lifers at Plainview Public Schools.
Okay, thank you both for talking through a little bit more of the educational aspects to what this plan does, and that's why you guys, for the committee members, see the numbers on the plan, because it ties into those big programmatic spaces that we're going to ask you to make your individual recommendations on. So at the point where we get to a survey, and you're all familiar with the surveys we've done in the past, we're going to ask you again, kind of group by group, based on what you saw for those numbers, is taking down the 1920 building a thing that you would recommend to the school board should be pursued as part of a potential bond vote, right? So this is the culmination of your work. We felt like we were maybe kind of getting there last month, but we still had a couple of questions. We're going to reiterate for you tonight again, the floor plan. You're not voting on, I like this plan or I don't like this plan. You're voting on, are these the right components, right? Individual votes as just a recommendation to the school board. They're going to take that information and make a final decision. Probably not tonight. That's not the point of today. Today is the culmination of your work, okay? That's what we're asking you to do. So to help put a bow on your scope, we're going to also then talk again about the costs associated with that and then the fiscal impact. So that's my portion of reviewing the floor plan. I'll turn it over to John with Houseman Construction.
Yeah, so in past meetings, we really talked about the backup to these numbers and bulking like areas together and using historical data and market input to pull this budget together. So I won't go over all that again. I just really want to hit on that this is a total project number here. It includes the construction cost, the materials, the labor, everything to put it together, but also what we call soft costs, so the things that the school would need to buy to furnish the building, whether it's desk, we call it FF&E, furniture, fixture and equipment. It'd be desk, tables, lunch tables, computers, TVs, things like that, as well as the design cost to design the building, bond issuances for the bond, and then asbestos abatement for the 1920s building before it gets torn down. So it's a total project number here. This bond would cover everything that was shown on the floor plan. So really, you've seen the total, this is the same total project budget as option C in the past meeting at $32,536,000. Really the only difference is in the breakout. In the past we were pricing 3 different plan options in about 2 weeks. So we really took this past month to dive into the details a little more and look at the 2 spaces that we've really talked about breaking out, which is the floor plan that you had, that was just up there, and then pulling the gym off and the locker room off of that floor plan. So that base option that we just looked at without the gym and locker rooms, $26,585,475, and then just for the gym and locker rooms, $5,950,000 and $5,950,528.
Just to also, I think, repeat something that we've talked about in the past, but these are estimate numbers. I mean, responsible estimate numbers to ensure this can get built if it passes. If it does pass, like Bob said, he'll finish his design work. Ultimately, this is competitively bid out, so if bids would happen to come in lower than the numbers reflected on the screen, the benefit of those savings come back to the school district. So not a bid from Houseman Construction, an estimate, and the school realizes any savings from a bid process.
Tobin Buchanan with Northland Securities, Municipal Advisor to the district and the board. My role tonight is to really, again, pull those numbers forward. As Houseman stated, it's the all-in number for construction and all other potential costs calculated. That's the number you would see potentially in a bond resolution and then subsequently on a ballot. If there is a bond called, there'll be a number set, a not to exceed bond amount, and that would appear on the ballot as well. So my job is kind of pull that forward, revisit again, what does that mean to the taxpayer? So in order to do that, I take that bond amount, which is the principal amount of the potential bond. We calculate using today's interest rate. Right now we're modeling a 25-year bond. Calculate what the interest would be also involved with a bond that size. And that gives you an annual bond payment the board would need to pay. Once bonds are sold, all the bonds are sold, that principal and interest payment each year, which is normally pretty level throughout those 25 years, it's locked in. Those are the amount of tax dollars needed each year to make the principal and interest payment on those bonds. And so to figure out a tax levy or a bond levy to be associated with that, to give you all the opportunity to start to think about, if it's that size of bond for that number of years, what does that mean to me and the property that I own? And so a bond levy is determined by taking that bond amount, principal and interest, looking at all the valued property across the entire district. So that's residential homes, commercial property, it's homes and buildings on the farm, it's ag land. It's everything included in that in your total district. Now, I won't go way back into the weeds on this, but you all know that there's new legislation that handles ag land differently today for voted bonds. It takes that ag land from an assessed value of about 72% of market value, and it takes it down to 50% of market value for the bond. That's been calculated into these tables already to try to give you an idea of a bond this size with a levy that would need to be levied by the board to make that bond payment. What does that mean to me? So if we first focus on that preliminary number of 32.5 million, using that valuation of the district where the ag land's already been reduced, using the current bond rates, a 25-year bond right now, a little under 4.2%. We're seeing rates start to slowly tick down. Not expecting major drops anytime soon, but potentially we're heading into an environment over the next couple of years. We could see things get better. But just to make sure you all know, while I might believe that, and that's what I'm hearing from economists, and as we watch the news, some pressures to maybe make that happen, I'm not building that into these numbers. I'm not building in a future lower rate to try to make this look better. We're using today's rates to calculate this information. So a $32.5 million bond, based on today's valuation, would require the board to levy 25 cents. 25 cents times all the valuation in the district to generate that bond payment. It's simple when you look at property. 25-cent levy means on $100,000 of property, $250 more a year. 25 cents, 100,000, $250 more a year. So the property table shows you cost per year and cost per month on 100, 250, and 500. On the ag land, a little more complicated because you have to take the average assessed value, get it down to that 50%, and then multiply that times the levy. So showing you tonight, in Pierce and Antelope County, you actually are in 3 different counties. There's a small portion that's in Knox County. I will tell you, the range for Knox, a little bit lower than Pierce, so it falls in these ranges. So hopefully by leaving that out, that doesn't cause any issues. But in Pierce County, the average assessed value per acre, that LB2 valuation for irrigated, a $32.5 million bond would be around $12.19 an acre. And then you see the dry land and grassland. And then on Antelope, there's a couple different market areas, so there's a bit of a range that we're just trying to show you potentially where it would fall. At some point, if there is a bond and an actual bond amount called, we'll create calculators on that bond amount that will allow you as an individual to go in there and put in your personal information and see exactly what that would look like on an annual basis. The next thing I'm going to talk about kind of came up between last meeting and this meeting. It's not extremely common, but there are some school districts, when they have a design concept like this and they're working through this process, and maybe there's a component of it, there's no question, we all understand that new competition gyms across the state, there's a lot of people that see the need and are for those, and some struggle to see whether that's the right investment or not. So we are breaking that piece out. This board could consider a process of calling an election where there's actually 2 different questions on your ballot. Potentially there could be question A that focuses really on all the academic, security and safety and program space. That's the $26.55 million that John alluded to. And you could have the gym and the locker rooms broken out as a question B, that $5.95 million. And so the sheet I gave you kind of takes that full bond amount and it shows you what it would look like if there were 2 separate questions that registered voters in the district could vote on. The way these are usually structured is that question B, in this case the gym and locker rooms, could not pass unless question A passed. So the gym couldn't just pass on its own. The reason you don't see these a lot, as you maybe you're already thinking, it takes education to make sure all the voters understand what's going on there with a 2-question ballot. But it's potentially an opportunity for the board to consider and the committee to think about, is that a way to go about this that breaks a component out and allows people to kind of vote on that separately from the rest of the project. So that document I gave you kind of helps break that up and really shows you the difference of the gym, which would be about 4.5 cents of that levy, that 25-cent levy by itself. Let me say one more thing I get asked this question a lot. When I look at these numbers, I call it a conservative estimate of the tax impact. What I mean by that, and I'm repeating myself a little, I'm considering these numbers meaning all the bonds are issued at one time, today at today's rates, and they never get refinanced or paid off or anything done for the full 25 years. And so I think that's the most conservative way. I think that's how the board would like me to present that for the purposes of tonight. More than likely, if you ask me what do I think will happen, normally for bonds this size, the board might issue an initial chunk of bonds, maybe 10 million, to get them through that design phase and the time it takes before construction actually begins and they need to start paying construction costs. Potentially then they wouldn't need to levy the full levy amount right away, and then they issue pieces as you go. That happens all the time. It's a pretty common strategy in that, especially if we think rates might get better, waiting and issuing some of the bonds a year later, a year and a half later, you might realize a lower rate over time. That's not built in here, let me be clear. That's not built in. I think that could happen, but we're using today's rates, everything issued at once. And the last thing I'll say I get asked a lot is about bond refinancing. So bonds in Nebraska, these bonds will be eligible to be refinanced every 5 years. The way bonds usually work is your short bonds have the lower rates on them, and as you pay those off over time, your average rate goes up a little bit. So if you can issue new bonds and replace those at lower rates, you can save money each year on your bond payment, or you can take that savings and shorten your bond, pay them off early. Most Nebraska school bonds get refunded 2, 3, sometimes 4 times over their life cycle. That is not built into these numbers tonight. I get asked that question a lot, so I'm sharing that. So this is the most conservative approach, in my opinion, to share with the public what the costs could be based on today's economic environment.
25-year bond, that's just one option that we looked at. We thought maybe this doesn't bang for a buck. Well, I can't remember. Could you maybe just speak like what a 30-year bond, what the terms would potentially look like? I remembered something about that we didn't have a whole lot of incentive to do that.
Yeah, so the bond rate, the bond term, the maturity length is not determined at this point in time. If a bond issue passes and a new resolution's passed, the board does to kind of approve the actual issuance of them. There's parameters built in there that says it could be, we can put whatever we want in there, but a lot of them will say you could go up to 30 years. There was a time in the last few years that a lot of schools are starting to look at those 30-year bonds because of the cost of the projects. And the rates were kind of level across those 30 years. So it didn't hurt you. It wasn't a double whammy on a much higher rate on those last 5 years, plus the extra years. Today, you're going to pay a higher average interest rate to go 5 more years. And you're going to pay 5 additional years in interest. And a 30-year bond might only move that 25-cent levy a couple pennies. So I'm not saying, I think if I were to advise you, I don't know that you get the tax relief per year to make it worth all the additional interest you would pay, stretching it to 30. Taking it to 20 really pushes that annual rate up a little bit as well on you all. You'd save some interest, but that's You know, that could still be determined, that's not set tonight, but we're kind of modeling 25. It seems to make the best sense as far as the project amount, grades, and kind of that strategy going forward.
How many disbursements of funds would you say we go through? Because we talked about like a 22-month project, is that right, Steve?
Yeah.
Is that right? So maybe 8 to 10 million up front, first issuance, and would you have 2 more? Is that what it'd be basically? Or 3?
Potentially, so I think you'd be looking at your draw schedule for billing. We'd be watching the bond market.
Right.
If we really think you can get away with another smaller issue and we're really gonna save and achieve a lower rate, if we push another piece to another year, making sure you have the dollars when you need them to pay your bills, looking at the bond market, try to get the best rate possible. Those are all things we would strategize throughout that issuance. And so you have to have your full levy in place once all the bonds are issued to make those payments. But if you're issuing different amounts over a couple years, that levy you set could kind of ramp up with the debt as it's issued.
Yeah.
I'm glad to answer those questions, but I know I'm repeating myself, but we don't build those things in because we don't know exactly what that will look like. So we're, you know, I think those kind of things do happen and are common, but for the purpose of modeling, we go really conservative and show it all being issued now. Yeah.
You talked about we can refinance every 5 years, or you can issue bonds along the way as you go. So, for example, if you wanted to refinance in 5 years, is it based on, I'm assuming if it passes in May, it's based on 2026 valuations, will it be based on 2026 valuations or valuations 5 years from now?
Great question. So the question is, if I've got it right, you know, what year, fiscal year valuation is used toward the necessary bond payment, how it's levied, and like when do the actual taxes?
Right, if you're gonna go the year to year to year to do things, you look at that's the year of the value, we'll go wait until the county tells us what our valuations are at the second half of that year.
Right.
So it's a moving target, or do they get locked in when the year of the bond is passed?
So let's use the example of, let's say something goes through and a bond passes and the decision's made in July to issue 10 million. The board's gonna close on those bonds and take 10 million in July. On the day the money arrives in the school's accounts, the clock starts ticking on the interest, and payments are due every 6 months. The board then, at their September of 26, their September board hearing, budget hearing, they'll have to set a bond levy to start generating enough tax dollars to make the payments on that bond, those bonds that were issued. And so that levy is gonna be based on a new valuation, not today's valuation, but the new valuation the board's gonna get in August. And it's gonna be multiplied times that. Once the levy's put into place, people start paying taxes on that levy in January of 27, is when that levy actually starts being applied toward your taxes.
Based on what year's valuation?
Based on the year's valuation of which the levy is set, and each year as the valuation changes, the bond payment is fixed. The principal and interest, the dollars needed, it's fixed once they're sold. The board gets a new higher valuation, and the year before they needed 8 cents to make that bond payment, but valuations went up 10%. Now they only need to can levy 7.2 cents to bring in those same dollars. And the 5-year opportunity to refinance is 5 years from the day the bonds are closed on, each set of those bonds.
Okay.
You can, after 5 years goes by, you can leave it alone. It never gets worse. The rates are fixed. If it makes sense to refinance it and you can save money for the district, you can look at those opportunities. So a 25-cent levy I'm showing you today is on today's valuation. It brings in the principal and interest to make the bond payment. Let's say it's around $2 million. 3 years from now, you still need $2 million for the bond payment. If the valuation's higher, the levy relatively can come down to bring in the same dollars. Is that what you're asking me?
I think so.
I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
Mark, is we've seen 25 to 30% increases in valuations in Pearson and Antelope County, and so he's asking, is have those valuations go up?
As those valuations go up, the levy can come down to bring in the dollars needed.
On how often? Is it yearly, every 5 years, or is it?
It's as you set your levy each year.
As we set it every year in the budget?
Yes.
Okay, so every year.
Each budget year, you'll have a budget, you'll have a new valuation, you'll know how much you gotta pay for your bond payment.
Yep.
You'll set your levy accordingly.
Yep,
So
so,
if somebody built a new house 2 years ago, is it included in the bond or not?
Somebody built a house 2 years ago, does it include all property that is part of the district now is included in the bond? Even if it was 2 years ago. Existing property that's part of the district today, that tax base is used for the bond payment. Somebody builds a new house 5 years from now, it comes in and is responsible for part of the bond payment. So new valuation that comes into your district that's not here today will take on some of the burden of a bond.
so we as a board, every year through our annual budget meeting, and we'll look at valuations of our school district, and then we will set a levy then in conjunction with our budget every year anyway, to ensure anyway that we'll adjust that levy down, correct? Adjust that levy down as valuations go up, so the payment stays relative anyway to that.
So a single person could be paying more because of building his home or something.
So, could a person pay more? I would say, not everybody's valuation will go up the exact same percentage. If your property is going up a certain percent, and that's reflective of the entire district, and the levy comes down, your burden should stay about the same. Now, if you finish your basement and add $60,000 to your valuation, then your taxes, I can't reflect that. Then you buy another property or you add a garage, then yes, you have more valuation now. You're gonna have a little more of the responsibility for the bond.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah,
Tobin.
sorry, I lied.
Thanks, Tobin, that was a lot of questions, thank you.
Appreciate Bob and Hausman and Ms. Hodson and Mr. Schmidt for kind of keeping us, the committee, we've heard this a lot of times. We've tried to be as open as we could be. All these meetings have been open. Just want to give everybody an opportunity to see what we're doing, why we're doing it. And so I appreciate all that we got from them. So we also wanted to have 15, 20 minutes here of Q&A with those or patrons in the back. If anybody has questions, we have a lot of experts here that can answer any of the questions you might have. Comments, I would ask if you're going to speak, if you could identify yourself. Stand up if you're too far in the back where we can't see you, but we did want to take some time here to let you guys ask questions or comments. So.
What if the valuation goes down?
It's a great question. So what if valuation goes down? It has the adverse effect. The number of tax dollars needed to make the bond payment is fixed, so that shouldn't change. So if valuation goes down 10%, the levy has to go up 10% to bring in those same dollars. But the dollars, once the bonds are sold, the actual tax request amount based on the bond payment doesn't change unless it gets refinanced to a lower amount. So as valuations go up or down, the levy relative to that goes up or down to bring in the principal and interest needed that year to make that payment.
So regardless, we're still gonna pay the same.
Once it's locked. It's like a mortgage. It's an amortization schedule that once the bonds are sold, you're locked in for principal and interest until it never gets worse as far as the number of dollars you need. Sometimes it gets better because you refinance at a lower rate and reduce those amounts, but yes, that's correct.
Your other tax liabilities could go down though.
In
Right.
your other parts of your budget?
Yeah.
Or other government
You know,
entities?
Yeah, the levy or the bond amount would be the same, but your other tax burdens could go down if your valuations go down, but the bond itself would be fixed.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think, to put it in perspective,
Yeah.
for like you, Jim, on every 100 acres over the next 25 years, so in that 25-year span, you will pay $31,250. In that 25 years, on 100 acres. And that's based on all their numbers, if they don't refinance those, or, valuations. But that money is set, is what he's saying, and that's what it's gonna cost you for 100 acres over the course of the 25 years.
Can you address the current levy, what we have now? And then also, so then we add the 25 cents or whatever it is. And where does that put us with other districts in the neighborhoods?
I've got a copy of our annual report, which I presented to the board at the last board meeting, which has a whole lot of data with regard to budget over years, some trend data and so on. So yes, we've got a general levy, a building fund levy option, a QC Puff levy option. This would be another one. This would be in addition to that, so that you get to your total levy. So our general fund levy has gone, is 48 cents and change, 48 point. The details are on that sheet there. And of course, that's representative of the fact that, yes, valuations have been going up. And as valuations have been going up, sometimes some years steeper than others, as you all know, generally the board has approved a budget that is representative of that. So the levy has then gone down. So our general fund tax asking is the number that we have to arrive at, that they task me with. Darren, how many dollars do we need to provide the programs and services that we approve of, that we're required of, and that we approve of? Okay, well, our staff, many of which are here today, is where 80% of the pie goes. And that's where it should go. It should go to people. Okay, highly qualified, certified, good people that work with your kids and your grandkids and that work with our kids and worked with you on a daily basis. So that's easy for me to determine. What are our personnel costs going to be? 80% of the general budget is done. Okay, so then the budget or the board determines maybe some priority needs for the special building fund. Okay, that one's quite flexible, and we've had anywhere from $0.015 up to 9.5 cents in the years that I've been here in the special building fund. You're likely well aware of the investments that we've made in our school district with those dollars over the course of the past 10 years. Okay, so that's in addition to the general fund. We've never used the QC Puff, which is safety issues, general safety issues that came about with mold abatement many years ago. And but we've not levied for QC Puff. So it's always been a general fund, essentially to pay the bills, to operate, to provide our programs, to pay our people to do that. The building fund to maintain our facilities, maybe to provide a little extra space somewhere, maybe some, you can have some actual construction. It's what you might think of building fund. Most of our building fund money has gone to air quality in the years that I've been here.
So
okay.
If I could jump in. So the general fund levy this fiscal year, as Dr. Alt said, 48.4 cents about. That brings in $5.1 million to operate, as he mentioned. The building fund levy was about 4.3 cents. That brings in about $450,000. That money can go toward help some other needs and things like that. So about 5.55 million is what the board taxed this year. And I think that was just about 100,000 more than total tax asking last year. Pretty small percentage increase. The reason I'm jumping in is I just want to remind folks that 30% of that tax amount, you're all getting the property tax credit on from the state, 25 to 30%. We used to all have to fill that out in our tax return and then get it back on our taxes. In the last couple of years, if you've looked at your tax statement, you'll see like a school tax credit negative number. They're now taking that off the front of everybody's school taxes that go to the general and building fund. So of that 5.5 they taxed, about 1,650,000 is actually covered by the state in that ballpark. There's no tax credit on the bond. There's no tax credit on the bond. Ag land gets that reduction on their valuation on the bond.
Yeah, so you're fully aware that our governor is heck bent on property tax reform, and they've achieved, a certain level of that, probably to be debatable on whether it's significant or effective or not. He believes the state should pay for public education in the state of Nebraska. Now, whether he's going to get us all that way, even through a second term, and what that will look like, we don't know. All we know is what the rules are today for funding public education. Those are the rules that we have to live by. But there have been credits that if you haven't noticed yet, you will notice some property tax credits that are going to become effective due to the special session they held a summer ago. Okay, so it is driving levies down, general levies down. Our levy is in the bottom 20% of the state of Nebraska. Our general fund levy is the bottom 20% in the state of Nebraska, under 50 cents, okay, out of 245 school districts. We've had a general fund tax asking decrease 6 of the last 10 years, okay, in real dollars that we've asked for. We've asked for less the previous year 6 times. Okay, so the total tax asking is different because that building fund levy has fluctuated. But for general fund tax asking, which is going to be the overwhelming majority of the taxes we ask for, to provide programs and services, we feel that, and the board is certainly, because the board's budget has passed very, very reasonable, fiscally responsible budgets, and we have, the data to prove that.
So just something to keep in mind, your $1,950 increase of taxes for one parcel of ground is $48,750 I'll have to pay for that 1 quarter. I have 9 farms in this district. That's $438,000 of this building that I'm responsible for now. It is not that I own that all. A lot of that is rented ground. The moment tax is going to go up $1,950, my rent's probably going to go up over $2,000. I'll be paying for it regardless. Just something to keep in mind. $1,950 sounds cheap until you look at it in a 25-year period.
No, we hear you.
Of what one guy has to pay. That ain't talking all the other farmers in the room here,
No, you're right, Gary. And we all hear that. We all have,
Well,
backgrounds
and
here in
I
agriculture.
understand that. I'm
Yep.
putting it into light the people
Yep.
that might not realize that sitting in this room.
Yep. You're right.
That that's a huge expense.
It is. Yep. And there's business owners in this room here too, here in town anyway, they're gonna get hit too. That's just part of it, Liz, just to answer your question here on where we stand at with other levies, anyway, we're at 48 cents for a general fund anyway, and another 4 cents. Neely's at 62 cents right now. Summerlin's at 57, Creighton's at 66, Wausau's at 67, Pierce is at 77, and Osmond is at 60 right now. So, as Dr. All said, we're a ways below everybody else. But part of that is because we have the valuations to be able to do that. We're over $1 billion in valuations right now in our school district.
So it's not really comparing apples to apples, I think it's fair to say.
It's apples to apples when you start looking at,
Levy,
the
but
total
like
number,
valuation.
total of tax levied
But
anyway,
another school
not
district
rate.
could be
No,
way
I'm not disagreeing with you. When you look at dollars per student anyway, that would probably be a better way of looking at it anyway. And we've
Where do
looked
we
at that
fall
before.
there on dollars per student?
I can't tell you that right now.
It's on your report right there, upper right. So state average, are.
Oh, there we go. 22,000 is the state average. 22,401 cost per student. No, wait, that's the array. I'm sorry. Or the array, and that's in the area, correct? Then basically it's 22,401. We're at 21,736. right?
The state's what, 15,000 or something like that?
15,899, and that gets pretty skewed when you start looking at bigger schools, because they can be more efficient.
Yeah, rural schools are always gonna have a higher, per pupil cost.
And the numbers that we talked about, how many sped students that we have to support here too, that adds a lot of cost too.
So what was the principal and interest for 25 years? I maybe couldn't see it, but what was the total dollar amount with interest? I couldn't read it.
It's not up there, but I can tell you, yeah.
What
So,
is it?
so if it's 32.5 million, using the current rates about 4.2% for 25 years, there's $20 million in interest.
How much?
20 million included in that. So it'd be 32.5, that's if it's never refunded and all that stuff, plus 20 million in interest, so 52.5 million, which is what you'd pay back over 25 years. Using the assumptions today.
That number doesn't.
I'd just like to comment one other thing. I think I'd be awfully cautious about thinking our valuations are going to continue to increase.
And none of that's been built in. So I mean,
Right.
I'm not building that in. The only way I can help you figure out your tax impact today is to use today's information. So not projecting valuation increases to make the levy look better or anything like that. So just want to make sure that that's clear.
Well, in the last 20 years, comparing 20 years ago, if you figure inflation, we're missing about 15% on top of our corn price. If you put inflation on top of that. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Of course, my goal, I want to help you all be able to, just like some of the numbers being shared, the board and I want to help you be able to make those calculations and those estimates as part of your thought process and discussion.
Again, this is part of our committee work too, is talking about, if you take that plan and you put everything in, that's the 32.5. If you take just the educational portion, that's 26.5. If you take just the gym. We're not deciding that as a committee. You're making a recommendation to the board for them to consider. Should it be 32.5? Should it be 26? Should you include a gym or should you not include a gym? They're gonna make that final decision. We've gathered you as a committee to help us give them that information. What do you feel is something that should be put forth to the entire public of the district to vote upon? That's the ultimate survey, right? We're gonna get to a point where if they wanna call an election, they're gonna pick the number that they feel comfortable with, and they're gonna put that to the vote of the people.
Liz, did you have a question?
We farm, and we just recently got our operating note renewed, but the wheat prices have been, it's been tough. And so when I go to the banker, because I take care of most of that, you know, he wants to know, how are you gonna pay for this? And are you gonna be able to make enough profit to pay for the loan payments, which is essentially what this is? And so I'm just wondering, you know, it all sounds good, oh, we need this and this and this, but have you looked at the budget and the impact of this? In our case, it would increase our taxes, well, some of this is rented ground, but like Eric said, it would increase our rent, we'd be paying an extra $8,000 a year. And when I go to my banker, you know, that's gonna be a little tougher sell at the bank. And I was always taught, you can't just go buy everything that you want all at once. You buy it as you can afford it. And I'm thinking, at least for the farmers, you can't afford this. So have you looked at what's the bare minimum we could do now? And maybe, you know, 5-10 years down the road, then we maybe do another part of it. So it's not this big whammy all at once.
Yeah, I mean, we understand that. We're all ag related up here on the board. You know, some of this, it's been 50 years since anything was done here. Some of this maybe should have been done 20, 25 years ago. We would be asking for it all at once. But yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. It's a lot of money, but I mean, at some point we had the committee here together to put together and recommend areas that we need that we're falling behind other districts. that was their job. Our job is to, you know, be responsible to our students, give them a good experience, and we do have a lot of areas that are substandard. I mean, there's just, that's no doubt, so.
So, back to you, Liz, anyway, what Tim is saying is, we asked those questions of the group. What could you take out? And it's a tough decision to find out what can wait and what can't wait. And to get the best bang for your buck and not keep stringing this along, this is it. Really, it is. And there's some things anyway, and we've been over this since, when did we start this process? April, anyway. And you keep kind of circling back around, we really need to have this, this, and this. And yeah, could we thin it down some more? Maybe, I don't know. But it's kind of keep kicking the can down the road. At some point, you know, you kind of have to bite the bullet and ask yourself, okay, if not now, when? And that's what we're kind of asking everybody is, okay, if we don't do this now, when will we do it? Because there's always something else that comes up every year as to not do it. So when do we do it? Commodity prices, yep, right, for corn and beans, right, doesn't feel good. Right. As far as that goes, yep, you're right. And so we say, well, we'll wait 2 more years, or we'll wait 5 years anyway to do this. Anyway, well, 5 years, nobody can predict what's me in 5 years, right? So do we do it now? What we will tell you is that in 5 years, what we're showing you now for the cost, anyway, we're projecting, what, a 3% increase or more every year in construction costs if you don't do it this year.
Yeah, but back to your original thing, you started this back in April, and you
Right.
done the survey, and the lowest thing on the survey was sports and academics. And what did the school district spend over the last year on the football lights, the
That wasn't this
scoreboard,
last
the
year, Kyle.
practice field?
We didn't put those lights in this last year.
No, not this last year, just over the last year.
Over the last, what, 6 years?
Yep.
6 years. Yep, you're right. Yep, 6 years ago, we put in lights.
Yep.
Yep.
But you did the survey, and then you guys did totally opposite of what the survey told you to do.
We
Not
didn't take
to
the
spend
survey
money
6
on
years ago,
sports.
we just took it just last April.
And what did you do? You put in a video board, and you put in a practice field.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing that all the constituents said not to do, and you guys went and did it.
And the survey was directed towards the bond on school construction here, regardless of what this project right here. It wasn't about anything else that we did down there.
And it was priorities too. It wasn't saying we don't need to do this, it's just where do our priorities rank? We've also spent money on a lot of other things academic wise too. I mean, people hear about all the athletics because that's what they don't want to hear, but we spent a lot of money towards our students and the curriculum.
And now Osmond's gonna come over here and use our football field and scoreboard and lights, and means we're co-opting sports. And then Mr. Schmidt gives he starts talking about the junior high girls and boys wrestling and basketball. And just so the people that don't know, junior high girls go before the first of the year, and the boys do basketball and the girls do wrestling, and that switches. So the junior high boys and girls are not in the wrestling room at the same time. And then on the little kids youth wrestling, the 107 kids, that's a little bit skewed too, because some of those kids are Osmond kids. And on the front page of the Norfolk paper, what is it, about 10 days ago, Battle Creek, they're gonna spend $600,000 down there renovating I think it was a church or something, into like a wrestling room and all this stuff. And Caden and Mr. Schmidt and all them, that little kids wrestling, basically, to my knowledge, has nothing to do with school. It's a club, and any kid could come to that club. So to say that you have 107 youth wrestlers they can come from Osmond, they can come from anywhere. The school should not be required, that shouldn't even be an argument about needed space for youth wrestling, because there's nothing that even says it has to happen here. Yeah, it's wonderful that it happens here, but it doesn't have to happen here. Battle Creek, you guys seen it, you read the article, they're gonna spend $600,000 down there. They're gonna have youth wrestling there, and they're gonna have a golf simulator separate from the school. Pierce, down in Pierce, they're out of places for wrestling too. So the youth wrestling program in Pierce is inquired about buying the Willow Creek Vet Clinic in Pierce, and they want to renovate that and make that into a wrestling room. The club, because it is a club. And then the club, they said that being they don't have enough room for where their high school kids are at, the school was going to rent this area that this club built for wrestling. So the whole argument about how many kids you have out for youth wrestling, to me, don't mean nothing. You said you have 16 girls and 23 boys, and I understand that they have to have their own room and they can't wrestle against each other. But to go build a huge, fancy wrestling room because you have 107 kids in a club that can come from Osmond or come here or whatever and utilize this has nothing to do with the school, because that youth wrestling is a club. So when your kid goes to, your grandkids, whoever, when they go to a wrestling club here, whatever you guys call it, junior pirate wrestling, you write a $15, $20, $50 check to the club. Where does that money go?
Plainview doesn't charge anything to wrestle in our club. It's free.
It's free.
Yep, so Kyle mentioned that because our school's kind of the focal point of our town. You could bring in volleyball, you could bring in basketball, football, whatever, other sports. They operate here. That's how small communities work. The same argument is made for our high school and junior high. In our high school room with those 16 kids, that mat and a half, we're running into each other every day. When I was in school, when Jack was in school, we had to sit half the team out when we'd wrestle. It's not safe. The girls, if you go into their basement, they have 2 rows of posts running down the whole thing. Okay, not safe at all. Boyer has kind of modified it to make it safer, but it's not a functional space. You really have about an 8-foot circle to work in before you run into a pole, a wall, or an open space storing a bunch of other stuff that's not protected space. Junior high practices at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, every morning, because there's not enough space. Yeah, girls are now, boys are before. That still doesn't leave room for them after school, so they go at 6 o'clock in the morning every morning. There's a lot of
So the junior high wrestlers, you're telling me that they're wrestling after school hours?
Before.
And then they have to wrestle after, at 6 o'clock, is what you're saying? They come early and then
6 a.m. Just 6 a.m.
Then they don't have wrestling practice from like 2 to 3:30?
Thanks for the question, Jim. We got people here from Omaha. We need to keep kind of rolling. So
But no, they practice in the morning.
We used to have junior high sports during the school day, so I bet that's maybe certainly what you were referring to. We transitioned away from that many years ago and took sports out of the curriculum day, 8 to 3:30, and we moved junior high sports back to where it maybe was for a lot of folks, purely outside of the school day time. So they have to practice in the morning because both the rooms right now have varsity girls, varsity boys. So junior high generally practices 6 to 7:15 in the morning.
Isn't it fair to say even with our plan now, they still have to do that?
Excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead, Julie.
I got here early before the meeting, and in that dictionary, it says that a school is to educate and provide education in an institution of learning. Now, we have great teachers, phenomenal teachers, but it isn't about the sports. This is a school. It's about educating. And if you had to ask anybody else about if they would like to pay an extra 5,000 to 10,000 to 40,000 a year out of their paychecks to put towards this. If they weren't farmers, they probably wouldn't want to do this. The city people are banking this on the farmers. You guys are banking this on the farmers. Economics is to save before you purchase. Why isn't any of that being done? Have we looked at grants? Have we looked at anything like that? And lastly, you guys want this school. You guys want this, great. But every fall, I see teachers begging for school supplies on Facebook. I need school supplies for my classroom. Why aren't they being taken care of first and foremost? Why are they asking for supplies? Why does my son have to bring in money for school ground equipment? I pay taxes. Why is that? Why aren't our students being put first for learning and not sports? And again, if everybody else who lives in town would want to pay $5,000 to $10,000 a year for a new school instead of putting it all on the farmers, let's do it then. That's all I have to say. Budget.
Julie.
I can answer the question about saving. We're limited by legislation from front loading.
You can utilize the library.
No, I'm talking about dollars.
Oh, savings.
Okay, you may talk about saving for the future, we can't do that. We're limited by legislation. We can't stockpile cash over a 20-year period and then hopefully spend it later
We'll
on.
start giving deposits to Housman over the next 10 to 15 years.
I have a question. Again, this afternoon I was looking at some of these numbers, and maybe my math is wrong, but the increase that I would pay in taxes was about 25%, and I looked at a house in town that was about $200,000, and their increase was 8%. Where's the fairness in that? And was that taken into consideration? Can anybody explain that to me?
Unfortunately, I don't think we can do a whole lot about that. I mean, it's valuations and levies. I mean, that's just it.
People aren't gonna be able to afford to move to this town or build houses. We want this community to grow, but with these levies, you're not gonna have young people coming back building houses. You're not gonna have farmers that can afford to come back and start farming. You won't. You wanna see the population grow, but with the levies, you're cutting down the farmers, you're cutting down the kids to come back and farm unless they have parents and they have, generations and generations. Otherwise, the kids can come back and farm, especially when we're gonna be doing this to them.
One thing you gotta remember, Julie, is it's a 25-year deal. Prices are crappy right now, but there's gonna be a time when prices are a lot better. It's a cycle. That's why there's not a great time to start. Do you have any other questions? We better get moving on. So we got, next up is our survey of the committee members. So we've got kind of a preliminary questions here. Dr. Earl or Bob want to?
Yeah, I'd say, you want me to set the table, or?
So we've done this before, committee, right? We've pushed out a survey to you. So if you have your cell phone, I'm gonna text it to you. And you'll just be able to take it on your phone. If you don't have your phone, I've got another device for you. Okay, and they're simple thumbs up, thumbs down, 8 questions.
Yeah, it's yes, no. It's again, we're talking about having the programmatic spaces that we've spent the last almost year, if we go all the way back to April, reviewing, discussing, massaging the plan. Like I said, some of the things you won't see on here are the things that we've already cut. The daycare center, some of the renovations that we talked about, whether it be the stage, the science classrooms, some of the future classroom spaces, instead of replacing 6, at one time we looked at 8, things like that. So you're looking at a survey that deals with the floor plan,
that's the culmination of all of our meetings, the programmatic spaces, the CTE lab, the taking down the 1920s building, the providing new spaces for the pre-K and kindergarten renovated in the elementary building as it is today. We're creating that link so that we have one K-12 facility. And we want for you as the committee to look at each one of those programmatic items. As Darren had mentioned, they're kind of yes/no questions. And it's, do you recommend to the school board that this is something worth including in a potential bond? Simple as that.
If you didn't receive that on your device, let me know.
I won't be able to send it back to you.
No, you don't send it back to me. Once you click
Hey,
submit,
no.
the results. I guess, hold on.
Oh, here it is, okay. Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, he's got something.
Go ahead. Turning that.
Just using it there, okay, I got
No, I don't think so. We never realized all this interest. The purposes of where we're at today. That's right. I know they're rated years, 15 years.
Each one is a standalone question of each of these components. You don't see a number, you don't have a Pastor, did you go down? Bring your phone. Bring your phone.
This is sand. All of it. And this green.
You guys are all good. Are you done?
I think I said it.
Actually, Jerry.
What did you say? This benefits what, 51 or 54% of our
Yeah.
like you feel.
All right, we got all the responses totaled up now. We want everybody to know that this is the committee's recommendation. Okay, it's not a final vote. The school board still has to evaluate all of this. But we just want to trust in what our committee's been doing. Maybe they don't listen.
Well, this will get there. This will be okay. This Okay, so our committee again that's been working since last spring. Actually, we started this process a year and a half ago when Bob started the facility audit. He took about 6 months to conduct a facility audit, which was presented in April in the Pirate Gym. Many of you were probably at that meeting. We hope that you were. That was just that was an assessment of what do we have. What's the reality of our existence as Plainview Public Schools? And it took into account the ages of all of our facilities, when they were constructed, interviews with our teacher teams about their spaces, some fiscal data. So it was a booklet about that thick. So a little more than just a snapshot, but first facility audit that's probably been done to that level of thoroughness in decades, as I think, maybe Mr. Rasmussen mentioned. It's been 1975 was the last time the school board went to the public and said we'd like a capital investment in facilities. You're in one of those spaces right here that's 50 years old. Obviously very well maintained over the course of that time, which I think speaks well to our folks, taking care of the investment that you've made in our public schools. So this committee began meeting shortly after that April meeting. We invited about 24 folks, and over the course of 15 meetings and months of gatherings, several months, twice a month. These are the folks that are here tonight who've been the most consistent members and have helped contribute to getting us to where we are tonight. So we had a question about every one of the program spaces that Mrs. Hodson and Mr. Schmidt went through, and the floor plan copy that we've looked at that had the numbers on it. So 100% of our committee members say the 1920 building is substandard space. Okay, they've been saying that consistently since last year. Okay, so the 1920 building houses 8 classrooms, 5 teachers, and our wrestling facilities and lots of storage. Okay, so if the 1920 building goes away, what do we need to replace it? And most of that was the level 2 piece that Mr. Schmidt showed us with the wrestling rooms, 2 full wrestling rooms, and 6 replacement classrooms. Okay, the second question was, do you recommend demolition of the existing wood shop, which is a renovated bus shed from the early 50s? Do you recommend demolition of the existing wood shop to add to that space the construction of CTE, or skilled labor space, woodworking, metalworking, welding, agriculture, small engines, etc. These combined labs that have separate classrooms for those precise areas of curriculum, including woods and metal storage. That's generally been received pretty popular over the months that and Mr. Schmidt mentioned too, the percentage of our kids that are going into the skilled trades. Rural America will consistently tell you that these are the types of, we don't want to forget about those students that come through public education. We don't funnel them off to 4-year degrees. we need many of those kids, and that's their thing, skilled trades, oftentimes they're the ones that come home and provide those services. The third question was, do you recommend closing Woodland Avenue to link the elementary and high school buildings to create a one-roof school with a secure school entrance, kitchen and student commons lunch space, and centralized K-12 library, media, art, and vocal and instrumental classrooms? So joining the schools together. That conversation's been ongoing for months. You might recall back several months ago, the city council did vote unanimously to authorize the school to commandeer that space if a bond issue were to pass that required that space. Okay, and so this is the link of the buildings. This would keep our kids under one roof and provide a greater level of efficiency. And so 93% of the committee supported that question. Do you recommend repurposing the existing cafeteria and kitchen space to accommodate 3- and 4-year-old preschool services? Again, 93% support that. So if we vacate the kitchen in the elementary to bring it to the center space so that it can serve as kitchen, concessions, commons, lunchroom, that would allow us to repurpose the space over there for our early childhood. Question 5, do you recommend construction of a new FCS or culinary arts space which would accommodate repurposing our existing home economics space into a level 2 life skills special education room? So that was built for home economics 50 years ago. Girls went home economics, boys went to wood shop. That's gone, that went away a couple of generations ago. It's home economics. Yes, it has kitchens, but culinary arts is a whole different experience that we want to provide for our kids. Now that could be renovated into culinary arts for sure. But as it is today, it provides a terrific opportunity for our level 2 kids. And when I say level 2 kids, these are students that need life skills. They're not, when they leave Plainview Public Schools, they're not going to college. They need to live on their own. Okay, those are level 2 skills, and we're not able to provide those, and we have those students in our school today. Question 6 was, do you recommend repurposing or renovating existing classrooms in the elementary to provide appropriate spaces for special education services to include sensory, de-escalation, intervention, diagnostic, and special service needs? Okay, and Jen spent a good amount of time on that. Our students with the highest needs, our most vulnerable students, 86.7% of the committee supports that component. Number 7, do you recommend repurposing the existing music room to construct a new fitness or wellness room and to repurpose the existing weight room as a crossover hallway, storage, and handicap equipment access to the stage? Right now, handicapped students, a student in a wheelchair can't access our stage. It's been that way since it was constructed in 1949. We have band equipment that we can't get on the stage because we can't get through the doors to bring it on the front. They have to go outside and all the way around. So we do have some program inefficiencies with that, with our band room right next to it. Things have to go outside and all the way around to get on there. We also, our gyms right now are hallways for students, and so all day long we have kids walk across our gyms and through our weight room to get from one section of the school to another. We want to try to resolve that issue, and the existing weight room could become, which they use now, just a crossover hallway, storage, access to the back of the stage, because that wall, that south wall in the weight room, is the back of the stage. Question 8, do you support a bond scope of project that would include a gym and locker rooms? 73.3% of the committee supports that. Okay, so that's a recommendation to the board, and now the board has the burden to determine what to do with it.
So in general, committee members, I would thank you for your time and your efforts over the past almost year. This was your last chance to, I guess, make your committee recommendation vocal, and you've done that. So I would say we're turning it over to the school board now, and that probably leads us into our next agenda item, but I would say to you, that completes what we've tasked you to do as a group, to work through this process with us and make your voices heard as to what do you think makes the most sense for the school board to consider. And then it's ultimately their choice, the next step.
Yes, thank you very much, committee members. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All your guys' hard work. So the next item is to discuss the possible school board resolution and information campaign, I guess. Bob, you have any next steps as far as timeline suggestions?
Today is exactly what it is. We're in an open public meeting, but we're not asking you to take action. We're just asking you to consider the recommendation of the committee. It's up to you as a school board to decide what those next steps are going to be, when those next steps need to happen. Other than, Tobin, if you would want to talk about, we've talked about as a committee, if you wanted to have a May vote, there are deadlines that we have to hit to allow that to happen.
Yeah, I think your work from here is to determine if you want to bring some resolution forward at a public board meeting to vote approval. So when a resolution's brought in front of a board to call an election, the board simply is voting on a parameter, a not to exceed bond amount, and they're really just voting to say they believe it should be on a ballot, on a future ballot for the public to vote on. They're not voting how they necessarily feel about the project, only that they believe there's been a good process and it's time to put it to a public vote. March 1st is the deadline for the board to have a majority of them approve placing an issue on the ballot with a not to exceed bond amount. That could be done at their regular board meeting. It could be done at a special meeting anytime before that March 1st day. So that is when there would officially be a bond election. If it's going to be at the May primary, it needs to be approved by a majority of the board and delivered to the election commissioner by March 1st. I think some boards will have to have a workshop in between tonight and then possibly, or you discuss it at that meeting, what you want that final amount to be or the structure. So we would utilize a bond attorney to draft that resolution language and that ballot. What they need to know is what's the not to exceed bond amount, what's within that general project description that those bond proceeds would go towards. And of course, we mentioned tonight, is it a one question ballot or does it have two questions? So those things would need to be determined by the board. We help facilitate working on it with a bond attorney to draft that information. It'd be published, advertised as an agenda item, and brought before the board to vote on whether to call that election on that date at a not to exceed that amount.
And based on that, let's also say March 1st is the deadline, but because there's time spent with a bond attorney, we wouldn't recommend the board the day before March 1st trying to call that, because you need time to actually get the final bond language drafted.
Well, they can hold their meeting the last day of February with the resolution and approve it and deliver it the next day.
Okay.
The bond attorney needs some time to draft the resolution for you, and they need to know what's going to be in the project and what the bond amount's going to be. So that would be the next technical step, I guess, that we would need to.
I think that's why number 11 says discuss. This is not an action item on your agenda. This is now, we've completed the committee process, they've given a recommendation, and we're putting it forth to the board now to decide your next steps, with the understanding of if the goal is a May vote, you need to make sure that process is done prior to March 1st. It's got to be into the hands of the election committee commissioner by March 1st.
might digest, we'll refer tonight, get back together. It's like as a workshop, we want to have it a regular meeting. You know, I would suggest a week or at least take a week off or 2 weeks, and then our next regular meeting is the 9th of February.
That'd be 3 weeks, wouldn't it?
That's 3 weeks.
The ninth.
Yeah. How much time does everybody think we need to have?
Well, on the 9th of February is when we meet in the lunchroom, or when we meet in the elementary,
Okay.
so we can tour the school. That's a noon meeting. I would say that is not a good time to discuss
Okay.
this.
Yeah.
2 weeks for me is enough.
Yeah.
To think about it.
Yeah.
And we hold a special meeting anyway to discuss on, I guess, what we wanna, frame, how we wanna frame the resolution. Anyway, it's the only thing on the agenda. And if we get it, we can discuss it, we hash it out then. No distractions.
So no distractions, means the public has no comment, or what's
No.
what you mean by that?
Public would have comment.
Yeah,
I mean,
no comment.
public comment.
We just wouldn't have anything else on the agenda.
Okay, that's all I'm at, just nothing else on the agenda. It's a special meeting for that item.
Feel like Monday, the 2nd of February?
I think so.
High school activities that.
Is there school activities? No school activities.
There's
junior high.
Okay.
conference basketball down there.
There could be conference basketball.
Okay.
But we can't probably, that's something, we gotta do, this is priority over conference basketball.
Does that work for everybody, February 2nd?
What time are we going, 6 or 7, 6:30?
We've been pretty consistent with 6. Is that fine, guys? 6 o'clock on February 2nd?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll plan on a special meeting February 2nd, 6 PM in here to discuss further, the possible bond resolution. Again, thanks everybody for coming tonight. Appreciate the input. Thank you again to the committee, all of our, the Hausman, Carlson West, and Tobin as well for being here. With that, we're come to the end of the agenda, so yeah, a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
Second to adjourn, all in favor, say
Did they just score? What's the score? 10-0 now?